everybody, it's the Judge here from Greenfire Games. This is the second video that we have in the Eldritch Moon series. Right now we're going to be talking about all the different blue cards that are going to be in Eldritch Moon. So normally, when you're dealing with blue cards, you're not going to focus on the creatures. You're going to be focusing on the instants and sorceries, the bread and butter of blue. That's why it's my favorite, because it gives you that extra control. So I'm going to start off by talking about some of my favorite instants and sorcery cards in this blue set. The first one that comes to my mind when I was looking through all the trailers is one of the earliest cards that was released, and it really got me excited for this set. It's Coex from the Blind Eternities. 3 mana, 2 colorless and 1 blue. You may choose an Eldrazi card you own from outside the game, or in exile, reveal that card, and put it in your hand. Think about that for a second now. You can grab any Eldrazi you want and put it in your hand. So what makes this card extra powerful is it gives you there's a lot more utility with it if you have this one of your EDH decks, because one card could be one of multiple different cards that you'd want. Or in a draft sense, this lets you go outside of the game that you wouldn't normally be able to pull out of a booster pack and add it into your draft deck. So again, it just opens up the possibilities for every blue deck having this in there. The next card I want to talk about is an instant. And I really like this one because, again, it's blue control. It's my favorite. This one is called Summary Dismissal. This is also one that was a little bit earlier spoiled, but I just want to go into it. So it's 4 mana, 2 colorless, and 2 blue. Exile all other spells and counter all abilities. The one thing that always catches me up when I'm playing Magic is when you have a stack format. It's like, I want to play this card. Well, you're going to counter it. Well, I'm going to counter your counter. You're going to counter that counter. What this does, it's a stack killer. It says, you know what? No more. I'm done. Let's just put this aside. Never happened. And you know what? You can't use any abilities for the rest of this turn. So that's any creature ability, any enchantment ability, any land ability. It is countered. You cannot use it. So it's just a really good, it's a really good standstill type card, to where they're not going to be able to do anything against you, and there's going to be a lot of cards that were just wasted there. The only thing that could really stop this card is something with Split Second, which I don't think I've seen recently, or another Summary Dismissal, because it would cancel the previous Summary Dismissal. It's done. So we were just talking about some counter spells. So I'm going to talk about one of the counter spells that are in this set. It's called Convolute. It's 3 mana, 2 colorless, and 1 blue, and it's an instant spell. It's also a common, so you're going to be seeing a lot of these in the pre-release or the draft formats. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 4 mana. So this is very good in the draft format, or in just early game if you're playing a dual color blue deck, because it only costs 1 blue specific, so you'll more than likely have that blue, as opposed to like when you have like a cancel or counter spell that's straight 2 blue. So it's a little easier to play, and also if you play this early on, there's not really a good chance that they're going to have that extra 4 mana, or if they do, they're going to end up making that 3-drop that they just tried to play a 7-drop. And then they have the question, is it really worth the extra mana to do this, or do I want to use that available mana to try to cast something else? So not only will you might not get rid of the spell that they're casting at the moment, but you can still make them question and halt some of their next moves. I foresee seeing this card a lot in Standard as opposed to more in like the Legacy or the EDH. It's a good counter spell, but there are a lot better ones out there. Like I said, I foresee this one being a lot more in the draft format, because there's not, again, it's blue control. If you're going to be splashing blue in there, you need your counter spells, and since it's a common, it's going to be running in quite a lot of packs. So if you're going for that format, I highly recommend running this. Otherwise, I know there are some better ones, but it's still pretty good. There's one more instant that I want to talk about, because this reminds me of a card that I used to play all the time, and we've actually seen it reprinted recently in Conspiracy and in the recent Eternal Masters. The card it's Fact or Fiction. This reminds me a lot of that, because what it is, it's called Fortune's Favor, and again, this costs 4 mana, 3 regular, and 1 blue, just like Fact or Fiction. Target opponent looks at the top 4 cards of your library and separates them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. What this does is it lets your opponent try to dictate what you're trying to do. So if they pull 4 cards and they know they don't want you to have the 1, they'll put one down, they'll put that one face down, and the other 3 face up. So it'll make you guys like, I don't think they want me to have this card. So it's a little bit of a mind game, and it puts your opponent's fate in their hands, and that kind of goes more the meta of the blue control, because you're making them think, do I want him to have this? What can he do with it? What does he have that pairs with these cards? So you're kind of getting into your opponent's head with this one. That's why I kind of like it. Also, you get to draw 2 cards, possibly. At the very least, you get to draw 1, but it could be a card you really need. Or you can just draw 3 cards in case you needed some options. So there's a lot of versatility with this card, and it's only an uncommon. So you're going to be seeing it not as frequently as some of the commons, but you will see it pretty regularly in Standard and the Draft format. So I know it's not necessarily an instant or sorcery, but with Sigarda's aid, it very well could be, because this is an enchantment aura. This one's called Imprisoned in the Moon. It is 3 mana, 2 colorless, and 1 blue. Enchant creature, lands, or planeswalker. Enchanted permanent is a colorless land with tap it, add 1 waste to your mana pool, and loses all other card types and abilities. What stands out on this card for me is there's really not a lot of cards that specifically target planeswalkers, but also it can nullify any one of these cards. So if you have Sigarda's 8 out and they play a planeswalker you're afraid of, you just cast this right on instant, turn it into a new mana. They can't do anything with it. It's kind of like a pacifism or an oblivion ring, but it also works on the planeswalkers and any creatures you want. So it's an extra utility to get you in there to halt your opponent's turns, and also to keep control of it. Like, yeah, I don't think you want to see that planeswalker, so you're going to make it a mana. So I've talked about a lot of instants and sorceries for blue. I figured I should talk about some of the creatures, just because you are going to be running into them, and you don't want to have all of your creatures in a specific color if you're running a duo deck. So the one that really jumped out to me is Identity Thief. The creature costs 2 colorless and 2 blue. Whenever Identity Thief attacks, you may exile another target non-token creature. If you do, Identity Thief becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn. Return the exiled card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. There's a couple things with that I want to point out. So, say that you were attacking with this card, and your opponent has 1 creature. So what you can do is basically say, you know what, that card is out of the game, I become your creature, and you get to attack. So you get to remove 1 blocker when you're attacking with this card. But where I see more of the utility with it is the exiled card comes back into the battlefield at the end of the turn. One of the best creatures in this set that you can use this card with is if you control a Somberwald Stag. This is a green uncommon that's in Eldritch Moon. It takes 3 colorless and 2 green mana. When Somberwald Stag enters the battlefield, you may have it fight target creature you don't control. So the Stag has a power toughness 4/3, so that means your Identity Thief also has a power toughness of 4/3. So you swing. Best case scenario, you're doing 4 damage. If a creature blocks it, it's a pretty decent chance that you're going to be able to take that creature out. But if by chance that their creature is larger and kills your Identity Thief, this gives you a chance to have the Somberwald Stag fight the larger creature and possibly kill it, doing that additional 4 damage to it. So there's some... It takes some maneuvering, but it can be very useful. Another reason I really like Identity Thief is because if you were to remove a creature from the battlefield that has an X in its mana cost, when it comes back into play, it no longer has that. So it acts as a creature removal as well. Yeah, you might lose the Identity Thief in the process, but if a creature's that large, it might be worth the sacrifice. So the last card I want to talk about in blue is it's an uncommon enchantment. The reason this one kind of stood out to me is because it's something that I haven't necessarily seen before, and I like new concepts when I look at cards. Lunar Force. It's 3 mana, 2 colorless, and 1 blue. When an opponent casts a spell, sacrifice Lunar Force and counter that spell. So that's what really stood out for me on this card. It's in general, counterspells are instants or sorceries or whatever they may be. This is the first time that I've seen one personally as an enchantment. So it's just a new type of counterspell. That's why I figured this warrants a little bit of addressing. I can see this actually being useful in most blue decks because since it is a unique way to counter a spell. I mean, you'll see it a lot in drafts because it is a pretty good card, and it's not like the other counterspell that makes your opponent pay for it. It's countered. It's done. They don't get it, and it costs the exact same amount. I mean, it's the only downside to this card is you're going to be casting it during your turn as opposed to your standard counterspell, to where you can save the mana and you might not need to do it, and you can use the mana that you were going to spend on it for like a draw spell or something along those lines. So it's a little bit more commitment to it, but it still makes your opponent think twice about their next move. Alright, and thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If there's anything that you felt that we got wrong or left out, we'd love to hear from you and leave them in the comment section below. Also, make sure that you check out the other videos in this series. You can find them either through our YouTube channel, through our Patreon campaign, or through our website at greenfiregames.net, all of which you can find in the links below. This has been The Judge. You have yourself a good evening.